Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Uh, Disclaimer number one, you do so at your own peril. Uh, the next is, I have a couple of disclaimers. The next one is that I am no digital transformation expert. I am not a technologist. I am neither. All I have is a lot of gray hair and a very rapidly balding pate, uh, which means that I probably have some more years of experience compared to most others probably in the room. And therefore, what I'm going to talk about is not technology, none of that stuff. I'm not even going to use the word API, probably even in the next 20, 25 minutes, whatever I'm going to speak about, except you can see my platform name, APIX. I'm not going to talk about any of that. What I'm going to talk about is no technology, nothing, but I'm actually going to share stories. I actually will share stories, and these are lived experiences with all the gray hair, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Uh, the other one is that I am from the financial services industry. That's where I've spent my entire career, so to say. And therefore, that's the only industry that I'm close to, that I'm aware of. So I will talk about that industry. I'm just hoping that some of the things that we talk about are relevant to other industries too. Okay. Uh, what was the other disclaimers that I had? I am not very well prepared. I haven't rehearsed, so this is not a very slick presentation. So please, my apologies in advance. And last but not least, if anybody has an issue with the Indian head movement or the Indian accent, please tell me. I will hold my head steady and repeat myself because important we understand. So with all of that out of the way, let's get going. Uh, the need for digital transformation. Fact is, today, every organization worth its name, big, small, medium, whatever it is engaged in digital transformation in some way, form, manner, or the other. It's clear, right? Digital transformation is touching every single human being's life on this planet, even if they live in the remotest parts of the world. So, to tell any person in the C suite that digital transformation is not just a growth imperative, but a survival imperative is actually not needed. It's, as the picture shows, preaching to the choir. Everyone gets it, everyone is doing it. So that said, oh, actually, my presentation does have the word APIs. I didn't realize that. Over the last many years, as I've spoken to seniors in the financial service industry across emerging markets and talked about digital transformation, all of these terms have come up, right? And these are terms that all of you are much more familiar than I ever will be. But all of these terms have come up, every single one of them. And because these are the technologies that actually deliver the digital transformation results that the organizations want. So no surprises there. Fact also is that most leaders will not talk about the fact that many of their digital transformation initiatives have actually delivered only very average results. They will never speak about that. Happens, every single one of them. But when you speak to people who have actually led very successful digital transformation exercises or efforts, or are leading successful ones, they talk about technologies and stuff, but they all talk about one piece or one thing that has nothing to do with technology. Absolutely nothing to do with technology. And because what they say is that digital transformation is breaking the silos in an organization. It's a very different way of thinking about risk, managing risk. It's a very different way of how leaders lead, how managers manage. It's a different way of how customer delivery is done, how customer journeys are delivered. It is basically a very massive change in the way the organization thinks, the entire way an entire organization thinks. And therefore, they say that digital transformation is not about technology. Technology is just an enabler. Every single person here, I presume, is a technologist, so my apologies for saying that, but technology is an enabler. The one word, the one word that every single one of these people who have led digital transformation successfully that comes up is this. And in the noise and the buzz surrounding AI and APIs and all of these fancy words, this word actually gets lost in the buzz and the noise and the cacophony around it. But this is by far the most single important determinant of whether your transformation effort is going to be successful or not going to be successful. Culture is so fundamental, even more so during transformation. And it is, like I said, the most important one that stands out. Uh, and that's what my view is. That's what I've heard from most of the people who have led successful such initiatives. The fact that culture is the most important determinant is there, it's established. But what are the elements? And what these leaders have told me is that these elements will and do differ from organization to organization. They're not the same for every organization. It's a fallacy to assume that. But there are a few things that I heard that came out as very common across all these leaders that I spoke about. And these are the things that I want to highlight today. These are so basic, so banal, that very often these are forgotten. Right? People just take it for granted. People don't talk about it, and they take it for granted and pay a very high price for it. And which is why I want to talk about it. I want to put the focus on it, and bring those up for attention. The first element is E. What is E? Let's see. We'll talk about it. That's where I tell my first story. I was in deep sleep, and my mobile rang very sharply. I opened my eyes, and suddenly it looked like it was very early in the morning. But when I looked at my phone, it was 9 on a Saturday morning. Country code said Indonesia, which means it's 8 a.m. there. Who the hell is calling me from Indonesia at 8 in the morning on Saturday? I picked up the phone. Pa Umang, as you know, Indonesia, normally they refer to you as Pa Umang, we've decided to go with approach B. I'm still groggy coming out of my sleep, but I recognize the person on the other end of the line. This is Pa Idris, the COO of a mid-sized bank in Indonesia that I had just begun advising. Pa Idris. And guys, please, everyone, names that I mention here are not real names, right? If I happen to mention an organization name, it's not a real name. The stories are completely 100% real, but I have to protect their identity, so I'm not going to give out the real names. I had met Pa Idris in 2006 while I was working in Indonesia at some industry forum, and I was very impressed by his very forward-thinking ideas. I learned a lot from that. I continued meeting him there. We stayed connected even after I moved to Singapore. And in 2016, I happened to meet him at Changi. We were both catching flights to somewhere. I told him about the new journey I had started as a consultant, as an advisor, how I was very nervous about it. And he told me about this new role that he had at a mid-sized bank as a COO, and how the CEO had told him that we want to do digital transformation, but we want to do it in bits and pieces, smaller, not a very organization-wide initiative. And it looked like he'd been given a lot of autonomy. That's what he described. All good. We went our ways, went to catch our flights. About a month later, he called me and told me about how they had decided to look at the unsecured lending process and decided to, transform that. He was talking to me about it, but more importantly for me, he said he and the CEO would like me to come as advisor to help them with this entire transformation process, and also help select the suppliers, the tech suppliers who would help do this. I was very happy. We signed a contract within a week, and work started. They were going to issue an RFP, standard process. All of you are familiar with that. And I just said that in the RFP, we should also provide for the fact that if there are companies who don't have the entire solution, but can come together to provide the entire end-to-end solution, the RFP should allow for that. No one objected. The RFP was issued. Why did I ask for that? Because I thought that some of the new age fintech providers who operate in particular niches might actually be able to come together and offer a solution. RFP was out, was issued, responses came in, and eventually it came down to two of the standard global providers who checked all the boxes, everything was great. all work fine. And one consortium of a few, three, four different fintechs led by a well-established fintech. Uh, so that's what came out in the RFP. My view was that they should go for this fintech consortium and not for these large global names, because I thought that their technology would be a lot more state of the art, a lot more flexible, a lot more configurable. It would allow much faster time to market. Paidris also agreed with me, but like other stakeholders, he was also very worried about taking on this because there was massive risk associated with it, even though the cost differential was substantial. But full credit to him, he also didn't want to let the opportunity go to do something completely new and completely different. So we discussed this at length, and we decided on two approaches. Approach A, do the standard thing, go with one of the large global providers, no one would have a worry, you choose based on cost and stuff, move on. Approach B, choose that and also choose this consortium and run with both of them for 6 months with a regular check-in every month, at the end of every month, to figure out how things are moving with both. And at the end of 6 months, make a decision on who you want to go ahead with. We discussed these approaches. I was not in the management team meeting when this approach was presented, and I was told that there was complete pandemonium when he spoke about this. People were screaming, people were shouting, saying, "What the hell are you talking about?" And lots of objections, basically fear of the unknown. Basically fear of the unknown and nothing else. And for about 10-15 minutes, this whole bedlam continued, and suddenly the CEO said, "Quiet." Turn to Paidris. Are you fully committed to approach B and looking at this objectively to ensure that the organization's goals are met? And not just because you want to do something new, but to make sure that the organization's goals are met. He said yes. And he said, your decision, you are empowered, you decide what you want to do. Complete silence in the room, I was told. I wasn't there. It was like in one fell swoop, someone had cut through an entire forest. Complete silence. Paidris and his team discussed this at length through that evening. It was a Friday evening. They decided to go with approach B. And next morning, that night he texted the CEO. Next morning, the CEO said, "Go ahead." And that's immediately when he called me. Over the next few months, the bank started working with both of these. And in the first month, when it was all about documentation, writing out everything, asking the wrong question, not the wrong question, asking the right questions, putting everything together, the global provider, so to say, was much better. They had the necessary toolkits, they had a standard approach, they had a standard process around doing all of this, and the fintech consortium was actually struggling. And Paidris and I said, our goose is cooked. We don't know what the hell we've told the organization, but everyone's agreed, so let's go ahead with it. Very rapidly, those things changed. By the end of the fourth month, when we did the fourth assessment, when we started talking about technology and integration and testing and all of that stuff, this consortium of young age, new age, young fintech companies was actually doing much better, moving much faster, much more flexible, much more nimble than the global large providers. Fast forward, the company decided to go ahead with the consortium. Everything is good, right? That was 2016. They implemented in 2017 or 18, if I remember right. And till date, they're very happy with the decision that they made. So what is the E? At times of digital transformation, it is massive change. Massive change, right? It's business transfer, it's massive change. You have no past experience, you have no rubric to go back to, you have no expertise within the organization. You are very afraid of making wrong decisions which could have personal repercussions. Very afraid. And because of that, just when decision making needs to be very, very fast, decision making actually becomes paralyzed. And it is at times of such transformation that empowerment itself is transformative. is very transformative, right? You have to let your, as it says there, uh, you have to break down as leaders. You have to let your team members make the decisions. Tell them you have they yeah, you have their back. Or they have you have their back. Uh, Even if they do make the wrong decision, as long as you don't do things that are just stupid, even if you make decisions that are wrong, you have their back, right? It breaks down silos, it breaks down the hierarchy, individual rise to the occasion and actually do some incredible stuff, which is exactly what happened in this case. And that's what it says. Empowerment rouses, it awakens, it energizes the organization, and actually helps with digital transformation. So to me, culture, the most important thing, but the most important element within culture is empowering your people, and that's the first element. Second element is A. Okay. My phone rang again. More than a year had passed. Yeah, more than a year. And I picked up the phone and said, Umang, this is Jenny from Pak Gunawan's office, and he'd like to speak with you urgently. Pak Gunawan is the CEO of the bank that Pa Idris worked at. I've met him many times, but it was always along with Pa Idris, and it had always been had been scheduled well in advance. For him to call me directly, immediately, was almost like a breach of protocol. Right? And I was wondering what. He came on the line and said that he wants an hour with me sometime in the next 5-6 days. I said, I'm actually going to be in Jakarta in 3 days from now, so we could meet up in person. I was happy about that. Said Jenny would coordinate the logistics. And just at the end of the conversation, he said, and Pa Umang, the meeting will be only you and I. He had called me directly. Pa Idris was not involved in the conversation. And in true Javanese style, he had said a lot without actually saying anything. Pa Idris is not going to be in the meeting, leaving me to decipher what he wanted to say. Over the course of the next 2 days, very busy, couldn't do anything about it. But on the flight to Jakarta and in Jakarta traffic, you have a lot of time to think. It forces you to think. And I was thinking about it. 18 months had passed. The organization had made steady progress. And therefore, they had decided to expand the remit of the entire digital transformation much more broadly. Pa Idris had been appointed the Chief Digital Officer. Great. Pa Gunawan and I had discussed that if we had to do this in the right manner, there had to be teams that had to be formed that had to have people across all functions sitting in that team. Sitting in the team, not sitting in their individual teams, but sitting in that team. Not just that, their goals had to be that of the organization's digital transformation goals. Their rankings, their compensation, everything would come from that team. Because without that, things would not move forward. They agreed, everything was launched, and they had been making progress. So I'm thinking what's going on, and suddenly the taxi driver tells me, we're here. We were at Gurhan Niaga on Jalan Sudirman. I quickly go up to the 27th floor financial club, and within 5 minutes, Pa Gunawan walks in. As always, very immaculately dressed. I commended him on that. We sat down, and he immediately says, Umang, this is not working. He always calls me Pa Umang. Suddenly he says, Umang, this is not working. That's also new. And he started explaining how the teams had been established, the structure had been established exactly as we had discussed it would be. Everything was good with that. Everyone's goals had been aligned. There were people in the team, they had goals aligned to the organization digital transformation goals. Pa Idris was leading this team. The team members were all very happy with him. Everything was very, he was very effective as a leader of a cross-functional team, all good. And I'm thinking he's telling me everything is good. What's the problem then? And then he quickly came to that. He says, well, everything in the team is working, everyone in the team is working together very well. He knows that the team, Pa Idris, and the other teams outside of this, the business leaders, are actually not working well together. They are in fact probably working at cross purposes. Right? So within the team is okay, but they obviously have to work with businesses to deliver, and that interaction is not working well. We discussed this for the next 1 hour, tried to figure out reasons, couldn't. He said, Umang, think about it for a week and then we'll connect again. I said, okay. Uh, at the airport lounge in Jakarta and on the flight back to Singapore, thought about it, had a lot of time to think about it. As soon as I landed, I called Pa Gunawan and I said, I'm not going to go into the details here, Pa, but I want to see. I had an idea, I had a hypothesis which I needed to validate and verify. I told him, Pa Gunawan, can you please send me the goals for Pa Idris, his team members, and all the business leaders? Can you send that to me? He said, okay. And he said, okay, that's fine. You will have them within the hour. You will have them by tomorrow, but within the hour, they were in my email. I looked at them, and I was extremely angry and upset with myself. Extremely angry and upset with myself. It was so clear, so obvious what had gone wrong, and we should have been able to find that out right at the very beginning, right, and address it right up front. Pa Idris's team and their team members, their goals were aligned to the organization goals. But the business leaders' goals were different. And they were not working at cross purposes, they were just working on two very different things. The transformation goals would lead to benefits in the medium and long term for businesses, not in the immediate term, and therefore these things did not feature in their goals at all. So they were not working at cross purposes, they were working on two completely different things. It was not surprising. Next morning, I spoke to Pa Gunawan, I explained this to him, saying this is what I think. Very long silence, and then he suddenly says, Astaga. Astaga in Bahasa translates to, oh my gosh. Very dejected. But then immediately turned on and said, we can fix this quickly, Bisa. Can. Called his team, told them the context, gave them the context, told them that we have to get alignment. Didn't tell them what the KPIs should be. Told them, you guys work together, you decide what the KPIs are, but every single person should have the same KPIs. The business leader, whatever their KPIs are, exactly the same thing, word to word, should be replicated in Pa Idris's goals. Gave them that direction and told them that you have 2 weeks to do it. They did it. Actually happened. Goals were aligned. Things changed dramatically. He then told me something that I still remember. He says empowering people was good, all of that was good. But the most critical thing that led to this, to success, was alignment. If you don't have alignment across teams, across functions, you will never be able to do it. You can empower them, or you have to align them. Very, very important. So that was the second. Element. John tells me that I have very little time left. But I'm going to take 5 more minutes and go through the rest of it very quickly. So we spoke about E, A, EAC. Rafael Villanueva, Philippines. Grew up in Quezon City, Manila, hard life. Very hardworking, therefore got the results he wanted, very bright. Started his career as a trainee in a large Philippine bank, very hierarchical, exactly the way it works. Worked there for 6 years, and then got an opportunity to work in a foreign bank. Very different culture, very open, and one of the people that he dealt with regularly was someone 3 levels above him, not directly above him, somewhere else in the organization. Person who was, he says, a great proponent of servant leadership. Didn't direct, coached, listened more than he talked, empowered people, always wanted to resolve their issues, address their challenges, interested in their growth. And Rafael says he learned a lot from him. He started managing some teams himself and tried to implement everything there that he learned. Good stuff. Fast forward 10 years, Rafael is now the deputy CEO and COO of a bank, local bank. He moved from the foreign bank. He says they've changed the culture, decision making doesn't happen here, everything happened in regional offices and global offices. Too stifling. I moved somewhere where I can make a difference. They had a digital transformation initiative, making progress, everything is good. But he and the CEO often discussed that progress was patchy, and they did not often get the exact results that they wanted, and they were trying to figure out why, but they couldn't. Rafael kept thinking about it. He spoke to many people, was forming an idea, and he says one day then he heard something that cemented what his belief was. He'd walked into a room, and there were some staff members talking. Customers can onboard digitally, they can do video onboarding, customers can do this, customers can send images, customers can do all of this stuff. We still have to submit papers, pare. Why can't all of this be automated for us? Right? And he saw this person's desk, and this person was putting papers together for filing expense claims. And then he went back to his room and thought about it at a long time just by himself, and then started a series of conversations within his entire organization which said, customers can do this, but employees can. And what had happened was, over the last 2 years, they had really changed a lot of customer journeys. And there were successes, but not the way they expected. Why? Because the employee journeys were such that they had many controls, checkpoints, and everything built in, and manual checkpoints, which had never been changed. Employees thought that those controls and checkpoints and everything were non-negotiable, were sacrosanct. And they carried the same attitude as they were looking at customer journeys. And therefore, customer journeys still had lots of breakpoints. They started a new program. For every one customer journey that they look at, they will also look at an employee journey, 1:1. The whole thinking changed. And they said, question anything and everything. You're empowered. Question anything and everything and we'll support you, right? Let's find out alternate means and stuff. Over the next few months, everything, expense claim, hardware requisition, this, that, I mean, you could name everything that an employee had to do in an organization. Every single journey changed. And employees were really energized, were really engaged. And they carried that same attitude then to customer journeys, and customer journeys now looked 100 times better than what they looked at earlier. Interest of time, ESC employees are customers. If you don't think of employees as customers, you're going to have a challenge, right? If you focus only on customers as customers and not as employees as customers, there are issues that will happen. And improve employee journeys not just for efficiencies, but to actually better and enrich lives. They become your strongest brand ambassadors and promoters. So that's the third element: empowerment, alignment, employees as customers. I have a fourth story. Interest of time, I'm not going to go through the story, but I'll very quickly go through what this SFF. Everyone knows what SFF is, right? Exactly the answer I expected. Fintech entrepreneurs take very significant risks when they start their fintech ventures. They believe that banks don't take the same risk. And this has become staple of bank bashing. Nothing could be farther than truth, and this shows an appalling lack of knowledge or appalling ignorance about banking. Credit risk, market risk, liquidity risk, operational risk, regulatory risk, every single thing that banks do today, right? And every organization does, has risk associated with it. Banks take on risk in every single thing that they do day in and day out. So to say that banks don't take risk is a complete fallacy. However, banks are also very, very focused on risk mitigation. And what the banking leaders have to realize that the same risks that they take in their credit processes and all the other processes, they can and should be taking in their collaborations and partnerships, right? You have a credit product paper, you test out things, you know you will bear losses. They say, yes, we are willing to write off or take losses of up to $1 million to test this out, $500,000 to test this out, whatever, depending on size and scale of the bank, they agree to do that. If you're willing to do that, you're willing to put those guardrails, you're willing to monitor and check, and then decide what to go ahead with, adapt approach, stop a particular product, stop a particular program, why can't the same be done with fintech collaborations and fintech partnerships, right? Go into it fully well, knowing they will fail. Most of them will fail. Some of them will fail. Whatever. Fix a financial or any other threshold that you want to. saying we will go with it so far and beyond that not. But once you've done that, experiment, establish limits, watch closely, decide when to move ahead and when to quit. That quitting is not failure. That failure is what leads to success. You will try 7, 8, 10 different things, right? And I have a story that illustrates that, but I will not. You will try all of these things, and those 7, 8 failures is what will lead to that one success that eventually actually carries you through. So these are the 4 elements that I wanted to speak about. Successful leaders, it is not digital transformation. Digital transformation is business transformation. It is changing the way the entire business works, breaking silos, breaking mindsets, every single thing. And what successful leaders do is they empower, they drive alignment, they place equal emphasis on customer journeys and employee journeys. And they encourage experiment, knowing fully well that failure is what leads to success. All of these things need to be done. Technology then follows. That is what I wanted to share with you, digital transformation beyond technology. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.